They asked if humans could fight without guns. She dropped 3 opponents in seconds. Above, floating platforms carried crowds of spectators from different worlds, their eyes glued to the center where humans were a rare and curious sight. Lyra stood at the entrance, her hands relaxed at her sides, yet every inch of her body radiated readiness. Her dark hair was tied back tightly, and her sharp eyes scanned the audience without a hint of fear. Whispers floated toward her from the alien crowd, carried in a dozen languages she only half understood. "Humans cannot fight without weapons," one said, his voice low but dripping with amusement. He had 4 arms, each thick and rippling with muscle, and his skin shimmered like polished bronze. "They rely on tools, not skill." Lyra ignored him. Years of training had taught her that arrogance could be defeated with patience, precision, and speed. She had spent her entire life preparing for moments like this. Humans had survived on planets that turned against them. They had thrived in environments that crushed other species under harsh gravity, scorching sun, or frozen wastelands. Their tools had always been clever, but so was their body. She would show them that today weapons were not required. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, reverberating off walls and echoing in the crowd's ears. "Ladies and gentlemen, and beings from across the galaxy, witness the human contender, Lyra." Entering the arena, ready to test human skill unarmed. A ripple of laughter went through some parts of the audience. Some aliens even cheered for the anticipated disaster, enjoying the thought of seeing the weak human crushed. But Lyra's calm presence and measured breathing began to silence some skeptics. Even before the fight began, she carried an aura of quiet confidence, the kind that made observers instinctively measure the gap between their assumptions and reality. The arena floor shifted slightly as the 3 opponents stepped in. Each was taller, heavier, and had claws that could easily tear through standard armor. One had a skin like tempered steel, another's limbs bent in angles that gave him a terrifying reach, and the third glowed faintly with bioluminescent energy, the kind that could overwhelm weaker nervous systems. They assumed victory before the fight even began, their smirks wide and arrogant. The crowd leaned forward, the tension electric. The aliens were the favorites, champions of countless intergalactic tournaments, their victories celebrated across multiple star systems. And yet here stood a single human, small in size compared to them, with nothing but her body, her mind, and her reflexes. A bell rang, and the arena lights shifted. Time slowed in the mind of Lyra, as if the universe had paused to witness the opening of the match. Her eyes flicked from one opponent to another, measuring the distance, the stance, and the rhythm of their breathing. Every movement they made betrayed their confidence, and confidence could be exploited. The first alien lunged, claws extended in a deadly arc. Lyra moved just slightly to the left, her body barely shifting, her weight perfectly balanced. Using his momentum against him, she twisted under his strike and pushed with both feet against the floor, causing him to overextend and stumble forward. She didn't strike him, she didn't need to. Gravity, momentum, and precision did her work. The alien crashed to the floor, dazed, giving her an instant tactical advantage. The second opponent attacked from behind, his long limbs swinging like mechanical hammers. Lyra spun, ducked, and grabbed his arm mid-swing. She felt the tension in his muscles, the way he moved without thinking. Humans were observers by nature. She watched, felt, and responded. With a quick pivot, she directed his momentum into a somersault, and he landed in a heap, stunned and struggling to recover. The third one hesitated, sensing something unfamiliar. Lyra didn't waste time analyzing him further. She kept moving, her body flowing in ways the alien hadn't anticipated. She stepped forward, her foot tapping with a rhythm that seemed simple, almost casual. And then, with a single, sharp strike to the side of his knee, followed by a push on his shoulder, the bioluminescent alien lost balance entirely, falling backward. The entire crowd gasped. 3 aliens toppled in seconds, unarmed by a single human. Lyra stepped back, her chest rising and falling evenly, as if she had walked through a breeze rather than a storm of attacks. The silence that followed was almost tangible. The arena wasn't just quiet, it was holding its breath. Even the announcer hesitated, as if struggling to find words that could describe what had just happened. Finally, the silence shattered. Shouts, cheers, and exclamations erupted from the crowd. Some aliens were genuinely stunned, others tried to mask their surprise with indignation. But respect, grudging or otherwise, began to surface in their expressions. Humans, they realized, were far more dangerous than they had assumed. Not because of technology, but because of adaptability, skill, and instinct. A few moments later, the fallen aliens regained their footing, looking at Lyra not with hatred, but with something closer to awe. One of them, the one with shimmering bronze skin, nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. Lyra nodded back, her own expression calm, unassuming. She did not gloat, her actions spoke louder than any words could. Back in the crowd, spectators whispered among themselves, debating the human's abilities. "How did she move like that?" one asked, voice quivering with excitement. Another replied, "She didn't just react, she predicted." And in those conversations, a seed of admiration was planted. Lyra had trained for this moment for years, yet she didn't rely on brute strength or weaponry. Humans were resourceful, taught by millennia of survival in unforgiving worlds. Every planet they had colonized, every predator they had faced, had sharpened their instincts. They learned to adapt quickly, think creatively, and act decisively. The aliens in the arena were strong and dangerous, yes, but they often assumed superiority based on size and raw power. Lyra exploited that assumption effortlessly. Her mind was a mixture of focus and calm observation. She could hear the subtle noises around her, the scrape of claws against metal, the faint hum of the arena energy shields, even the small shift in air as the crowd moved. Humans had evolved to notice these details, to anticipate, to act before reaction became necessary. In the few seconds of combat, she had already read the patterns of 3 alien fighters and countered them flawlessly. As she walked toward the exit of the arena, the crowd's cheers following her, Lyra noticed younger humans in the audience, their eyes wide with inspiration. She had always believed that skill should be shared, that seeing humans achieve greatness inspired others to push beyond limits. Perhaps one day, these children would grow up to challenge not only aliens, but the assumptions the galaxy held about their species. She didn't look back at the defeated aliens. She didn't need to. Her victory was not about humiliation. It was proof. Proof that humans could stand tall even when underestimated. Proof that adaptability, intelligence, and courage could triumph over strength, size, and arrogance. The announcer's voice returned, now tinged with disbelief and excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, the human fighter, Lyra, witness the skill that defies expectations. A single human has proven that even unarmed, they are worthy opponents in this arena of champions." Lyra allowed herself a small, quiet smile. The fight had been a test not just of strength, but of patience, precision, and composure. Every opponent had been a step toward proving a point she had known all along. Humans, underestimated and often dismissed, were capable of extraordinary things when pushed to their limits. In the quiet moments after the cheers faded, she felt a surge of clarity. The galaxy might see humans as weak, as primitive, as reliant on weapons and technology. But those assumptions were about to be challenged more than anyone could imagine. Every fight, every challenge, every moment of resistance would serve as a reminder. Humans were clever, resilient, and unyielding. As she stepped through the exit and into the dimly lit corridors behind the arena, Lyra allowed herself a brief reflection. These victories, though swift, were built on years of discipline, countless hours of training, and an understanding of herself and her opponents. She had learned to control fear, to anticipate movement, and to convert disadvantages into advantages. Her body and mind worked together as a single unit, a testament to human potential. Even the aliens who had doubted her would have to reconsider their assumptions, not with words, not with debates, but with observation. Humans, she realized, were often underestimated, and yet that underestimation was precisely their advantage. It allowed them to move unnoticed, to strike decisively, and to achieve what others deemed impossible. Walking down the hallway, her thoughts drifted briefly to the next challenge. This arena was only the beginning. Across the stars, humans were scattered, few in number but mighty in spirit. If one human could topple champions in seconds, imagine what a coordinated group could do. Lyra's mind raced with possibilities, not out of arrogance but out of understanding. Humans thrived when pushed to their limits. She paused at a doorway overlooking the arena from above, watching the crowd begin to disperse. Whispers continued, some in awe, some in disbelief. "Humans are remarkable," a voice murmured from behind. Lyra didn't turn to see who had spoken. She didn't need validation from anyone else. Her actions spoke for themselves, a universal language that transcended species and worlds. In that moment, Lyra felt an unspoken bond with every human who had ever faced doubt or scorn, and proved their worth through action. She felt the pulse of something greater, a reminder that humanity's strength was not just in muscle, speed, or weaponry, but in ingenuity, courage, and the unshakable spirit to rise again and again against all odds. And with that thought, she disappeared into the corridors, ready for the challenges that lay ahead, knowing the galaxy had just received its first lesson in human capability. The corridors behind the arena were a maze of metallic walls and glowing panels, humming with the quiet energy of the space station. Lyra walked with calm purpose, her senses still alert even after the rapid, flawless fight she had just completed. She knew the arena was only the first test. In a galaxy that doubted humans, every step forward was a chance to prove their worth again and again. Voices echoed from the far end of the corridor. Lyra paused, listening. The sound was low, tense, and cautious. Whoever approached was moving carefully, perhaps aware that she was not an opponent to underestimate. She slowed her pace but did not stop, letting her presence be known subtly with the quiet confidence of someone entirely in control of her own space. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Not competitors this time, but scouts, representatives of a powerful alien guild that oversaw combat tournaments across star systems. Their expressions were difficult to read, a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and caution. The one at the front, taller than the others and with sleek black scales that reflected the corridor lights, spoke first. "You defeated 3 champions," he said. His voice was measured, but the underlying astonishment was clear. "In seconds, humans, you are unusual." Lyra tilted her head slightly, keeping her stance relaxed. "I fight the way I train," she said simply. There was no pride in her voice, only clarity. "The method does not matter, the result is what counts." The alien's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in thought. They were used to fighters boasting, to attempting intimidation, yet Lyra's calm certainty was unlike anything they had encountered. They had expected fear, hesitation, and perhaps even failure. What they found instead was skill, precision, and confidence. "You will face others," the black-scaled alien continued. "The next stage is more unpredictable. Humans are rare here, others will underestimate you, and that is their mistake." Lyra's lips curved in a faint smile, almost imperceptible. She had anticipated this. Every fight she had trained for was more than physical. Observation, adaptation, and anticipation were tools as sharp as any blade or weapon. The idea that she could surprise her opponents by using intelligence rather than brute force was second nature. As they moved along the corridor, they passed observation decks where other spectators could see glimpses of the station's internal systems and security grids. Some aliens whispered among themselves, their voices tinged with awe and disbelief. "She moves differently," one said. "It is almost as if she sees their moves before they make them." Another added, "Humans may be small, but they think faster than any species I have encountered." Lyra focused on her own preparations. She stretched lightly, rolling her shoulders and loosening her knees. Her body had to remain agile, responsive, and ready for anything. The arena had been a demonstration, but the next challenges would require endurance, strategy, and even more adaptability. She would have to use her mind as much as her body. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber where holographic displays flickered with the profiles of potential opponents. The room was quiet, almost sterile, yet the energy of anticipation hung in the air. Lyra stepped forward, scanning the data. Each opponent had a reputation for strength, speed, or unpredictability. Some had fought with weapons, some without. All had survived battles that would have ended lesser fighters in seconds. She recognized the pattern immediately. The organizers were testing her versatility, her ability to adapt to new challenges under pressure. It was not enough to defeat one type of fighter or rely on instinct alone. Humans were underestimated, yes, but the organizers wanted to see if that underestimation could be exploited for drama and spectacle. A screen lit up, displaying the next match. 3 new combatants would enter the arena. One was massive, a creature with multiple limbs capable of rapid, spinning attacks. Another was slender but known for teleportation-like speed, moving unpredictably across the battlefield. The third had psychic abilities, subtle and dangerous, capable of anticipating minor movements. Lyra studied each one carefully. "The arena will be your challenge," the black-scaled alien said. "Strategy and skill must be balanced. You have proven strength and reflexes, but can you survive unpredictability?" Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. This was exactly the kind of test she excelled at. Predictability was a weakness, adaptation was strength. The fight would require her to use not just speed, but observation, timing, and clever redirection of energy. She would need to stay calm while chaos unfolded around her. The chamber shifted, doors sliding open automatically to reveal the next arena. The crowd outside was smaller this time, a mixture of spectators and judges. The lights dimmed and then flared brightly, illuminating the combat area. Lyra stepped forward with measured confidence, her eyes sweeping the space. The three opponents entered from different sides, each emanating energy that could intimidate lesser fighters. The massive one roared, swinging its multiple limbs in a deadly arc. Lyra stepped back, letting him overextend, and then moved quickly to the side, redirecting the force of his own movement against him. The creature stumbled slightly, unprepared for such precision from a human. The slender, fast-moving opponent darted forward, a blur of motion. Lyra anticipated the angle of attack, using her peripheral vision and her understanding of momentum to sidestep and guide him into the path of the massive creature's recoil. Chaos briefly erupted as the two collided, momentarily stunned by each other's miscalculated timing. The psychic fighter was the most subtle threat. Its eyes glowed faintly, sensing the slight shifts in her muscles and attempting to predict her actions. Lyra moved deliberately, adding small, random feints and micro-adjustments to her stance. She made herself unpredictable, forcing the psychic to work harder to read her. Each movement was calculated to frustrate anticipation. Minutes passed like seconds. Lyra moved fluidly across the arena, dodging, redirecting, and countering with a precision that seemed almost unnatural. Her mind was calm, her body in perfect harmony with her thoughts. She used the arena's terrain, exploiting corners and subtle inclines to gain leverage. Every opponent that lunged, every energy pulse they emitted, was met with human ingenuity. Finally, the massive creature tripped over its own momentum and fell, unable to recover quickly. The slender fighter, caught off balance, collided with the fallen opponent and was momentarily stunned. Lyra saw the opening and moved like lightning. She delivered precise strikes, not lethal, but enough to incapacitate and neutralize her adversaries. The psychic, unable to anticipate her unpredictable movements, faltered and finally yielded to exhaustion and miscalculation. The arena went silent again, a stunned pause before the inevitable eruption of applause and astonished chatter. Lyra stood in the center, breathing evenly, her posture calm and collected. The opponents she had just faced were formidable, yet unarmed. She had navigated chaos and uncertainty to emerge victorious. The alien judges approached cautiously. Their expressions were measured, but their eyes betrayed admiration. "Human," one said, voice low and careful, "your skill is remarkable. Not only do you react, but you adapt faster than any being we have observed. You think, observe, and act simultaneously." "It is extraordinary." Lyra inclined her head slightly. "It is how humans survive," she said simply. "We adapt, we observe, we anticipate. Strength is not always physical. Sometimes it is in the mind, the body, and the unity between the two." The alien judges exchanged glances. They had witnessed countless species in combat arenas, but humans were proving a puzzle. Small, seemingly fragile, yet capable of feats that surpassed expectation. Every move, every decision, every display of skill was a lesson in underestimated potential. In the crowd, other humans watched with awe. Young fighters, some barely old enough to train seriously, whispered among themselves. "She is amazing," one said. "I want to fight like her someday," another added. "Humans are not just survivors, they are capable of incredible precision and creativity. We can win anywhere if we think and move like her." The announcement came over the arena speakers. "Victory goes to the human fighter, Lyra. Not just unarmed, but adaptive, strategic, and unstoppable. Witness the power of humanity in the arena of champions." Lyra walked toward the exit, acknowledging the cheers with a simple nod. She did not need to boast. Her actions were proof enough. Every opponent she faced had underestimated her, and every time that mistake had been their downfall. The human ability to adapt, to observe, and to act decisively was becoming evident, not just to her opponents but to the galaxy. As she passed through the corridors again, her thoughts turned inward. Every fight taught her something new, not just about the opponent, but about herself. Humans had a natural ability to learn quickly, to improvise, and to overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. That ability had kept them alive on harsh planets, in wars across star systems, and in situations where technology failed. The innate creativity and intelligence of humanity were weapons no alien could anticipate. A technician approached, a small, blue-skinned alien with curious eyes. "How do you move like that?" the alien asked quietly, hesitant but genuinely interested. "You are faster than your size suggests, and you predict movements like you see the future." Lyra smiled faintly, her response calm and steady. "It is not magic," she said. "It is observation, practice, and understanding. Every movement has purpose, every action has reasoning. You watch, you feel, you respond, and you adjust. That is all humans have done for millennia. We survive by learning, by observing, and by using what we have." The alien nodded slowly, processing her words. For some, that explanation would never be enough, but for others, it was a revelation. Humans were a species to respect, to study, and perhaps to fear, not for their weapons, but for their minds and their unyielding will. As Lyra moved on, she considered the larger journey ahead. This station, this arena, was only a microcosm of the galaxy's expectations. Beyond these walls lay worlds that doubted humans, species that assumed superiority, and challenges that required more than raw power. And yet she felt ready. The universe would continue to underestimate humanity, but each encounter, each demonstration, was an opportunity to rewrite that perception. She paused at the observation deck, looking out at the stars through the thick glass. Billions of lights twinkled across the void, each a world, each with potential allies, rivals, and threats. Humans were few, scattered, and often overlooked, but in every challenge they had a chance to show their true strength. Not in firepower, but in spirit, ingenuity, and adaptability. And Lyra knew, as she looked out at the endless expanse, that humans would not merely survive. They would thrive, outthink, and surpass the expectations of any species who dared to doubt them. The next morning, the station's corridors hummed with activity as spectators, fighters, and organizers prepared for the next round. Lyra moved with the same calm focus she had shown since entering the arena. Her mind replayed the previous battles, analyzing every movement, every reaction, and every subtle mistake her opponents had made. She knew that victories in this competition were not just about speed or strength, they were about adaptability, perception, and timing. A new challenge awaited her. The announcement had come the night before, a surprise round, unpredictable and unscripted. Lyra had no details, no information about her opponents, and that was exactly how she preferred it. Human instinct and improvisation thrived in uncertainty. The aliens, on the other hand, relied heavily on patterns, predictability, and raw power. They would struggle when those assumptions were shattered. As she entered the staging area, a large transparent wall separated her from the arena itself. Beyond it, holographic projections flickered, revealing shifting terrain that could alter at any moment. Platforms rose and fell, energy barriers pulsed with light, and obstacles moved with mechanical precision. The arena was a living challenge, designed to test reflexes, intelligence, and endurance. Lyra studied every detail, calculating angles, possible traps, and escape routes. The announcer's voice filled the chamber. "Welcome to the unsanctioned trial. No prior knowledge, no preparation, only skill, wit, and adaptability will carry you through. Humans have been underestimated for centuries. Let us see if this one proves them wrong." Lyra did not respond. She simply nodded, her calm expression hiding the anticipation building in her chest. This was not fear, it was excitement. She thrived on challenges that required more than brute force. Every obstacle was a puzzle, every opponent a lesson, and every movement an opportunity to showcase the ingenuity that humans carried within them. The first opponent entered, a massive, quadrupedal alien covered in spiked armor. Its eyes glowed red, scanning the arena with heightened awareness. The crowd murmured at the sheer size of the creature, anticipating a swift victory over the human fighter. Lyra observed, her stance relaxed but ready, every muscle prepared to respond. The creature charged. Its legs pounded the ground with earth-shaking force, sending tremors across the arena floor. Lyra shifted lightly, using the creature's momentum against it. She sidestepped, guided its motion, and with a subtle kick, sent it tumbling over a platform's edge. The beast roared but quickly regained footing, now wary of the small human who moved with such precision. Before she could celebrate, the second opponent appeared. Sleek, serpentine, and fast, it slithered along the platforms, moving unpredictably. Its skin shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the arena lights in confusing patterns. Lyra did not panic. She focused on its rhythm, noting subtle cues in its movement, how its body shifted before a strike, how its tail extended before lunging. Humans had evolved to read subtle signs, to anticipate, and she used that instinct to her advantage. When it struck, she leaned back, barely dodging its elongated claws. Then, with a rapid motion, she grabbed a nearby energy panel and used it to redirect the alien's momentum. It crashed against the side of a platform, stunned but not defeated. Lyra did not relent. She moved with precision, positioning herself so that every movement her opponents made would work against them. The third opponent was the most dangerous. Small, nearly invisible, and capable of short bursts of teleportation, it materialized suddenly beside her. Lyra reacted instinctively, spinning and sweeping her leg to knock it off balance. The creature vanished and reappeared behind her, forcing her to remain in constant motion. Every muscle, every thought, every reflex had to work in unison. Humans had learned survival through adaptation, and now that training paid off. Minutes passed in a blur. The crowd could barely follow her movements as she danced through the shifting arena. Platforms moved underfoot, energy barriers pulsed, and her opponents adapted to her style, but Lyra adapted faster. She was unpredictable. She was precise. She was human. The quadrupedal creature lunged again, aiming to corner her against a wall. Lyra feinted, leading it into the path of the serpentine alien. The two collided, staggering in surprise. The teleporting opponent struck at the same moment, but Lyra anticipated the trajectory. With a swift motion, she redirected the attacker into the collision, creating chaos among her opponents. Within seconds, she had turned their strength and unpredictability into disadvantage. By the time she landed lightly on a moving platform, all three opponents were struggling to regain balance. The audience erupted into cheers and gasps. Some aliens in the crowd shook their heads in disbelief. Humans were fragile, they had assumed, yet here one human had overcome three of the most dangerous fighters in the arena, not by power, not by technology, but by intelligence, instinct, and timing. Lyra seized the opportunity. She moved carefully but decisively, using every movement to maintain balance and control. A series of precise strikes and pushes brought each opponent down without causing permanent harm. The massive creature stumbled and fell, the serpentine alien crashed against a platform, and the teleporting fighter exhausted itself trying to predict her next move. The bell rang, signaling the end of the trial. Silence filled the arena before it erupted into thunderous applause. Humans in the audience cheered wildly, inspired by what they had seen. The alien spectators were stunned. Many had assumed that size, speed, and raw power would dominate every match, yet here was proof that humans were far more dangerous than appearances suggested. The judges approached cautiously, their expressions a mixture of respect and astonishment. The black-scaled alien from the previous round spoke first. "Human, you are exceptional. Not only do you react to chaos, but you create order within it. You use your mind as effectively as your body. You have proven adaptability, precision, and resilience beyond expectation." Lyra nodded slightly. "Adaptability is survival," she said. "Humans have always relied on it. Strength alone is not enough. Observation, timing, and creativity are just as important. That is how we survive and thrive where others might fail." The judges exchanged glances, acknowledging the truth in her words. Across the galaxy, many species measured power through size, technology, or raw strength. Humans, however, had a different metric. They survived by understanding, predicting, and responding, turning limitations into advantages and underestimation into opportunity. The crowd slowly quieted, some whispering in awe. "She anticipates every move," one alien said. "It is as if she sees the future," another added. "Humans are clever. They survive by understanding their enemies and adapting instantly. This is remarkable." Back in the staging area, Lyra allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. Each challenge, each fight had honed her skill further. Humans had evolved over millennia to survive in harsh environments, to adapt to predators, and to overcome obstacles that would crush other species. That ability, the instinctive combination of mind and body, was now on full display. She thought of the young humans watching, their eyes wide with admiration. One day, they too would face challenges, and they would remember what they had seen. That humans could excel in the face of overwhelming odds, relying on intellect, creativity, and courage instead of sheer force. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena once more. The human contender, Lyra, has completed the unsanctioned trial. 3 opponents, unpredictable and dangerous, overcome with intelligence, skill, and adaptability. Witness the power of humanity. Lyra exited the arena with measured steps, acknowledging the applause with a simple nod. She did not need to celebrate. Her victories were not about recognition, they were proof of what humans were capable of. Every opponent she defeated, every challenge she overcame, was a lesson in the underestimated potential of her species. As she walked through the corridors again, the station's hum and light seemed less like machinery and more like the pulse of the galaxy itself, observing, measuring, and responding. Lyra felt the weight of expectation, not as pressure, but as motivation. Humans were rare across the stars, often overlooked, yet in every encounter, they had the chance to demonstrate that their greatest weapon was not technology or brute force. It was ingenuity, resilience, and spirit. Her thoughts drifted to the future. The arena was only one stage among countless others. Worlds beyond this station, civilizations that doubted humanity, challenges that demanded more than strength, would all test the limits of human potential. And she would be ready. Each victory, each test, each proof of skill was part of a larger pattern, a reminder that humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and capable of surpassing expectation. Pausing at a large viewport, Lyra gazed at the stars beyond the station. Countless lights flickered in the distance, planets, colonies, and civilizations yet to meet humanity. Many assumed humans were weak, small, or fragile, but she knew the truth. Humanity's strength lay in observation, adaptation, and courage. They learned from every encounter, adapted to every threat, and thrived in environments where others failed. A soft vibration on her wrist signaled an incoming message. It was from her trainer back on Earth, a simple phrase: "They will underestimate you again. Remember why you fight." Lyra smiled faintly. That was exactly why she fought, not for fame, not for reward, but to show that humans could overcome any expectation, that spirit, intelligence, and courage were forces as powerful as any weapon. Turning away from the viewport, she continued her path through the corridors, prepared for whatever challenge awaited next. Across the galaxy, humans were watching, learning, and preparing. Lyra had shown one truth: no matter the odds, humans could fight, adapt, and triumph. The universe had begun to notice, and they would not forget. Every step she took echoed with the promise of more victories, more lessons, and more proof that humans, underestimated and dismissed, were capable of greatness beyond imagination. And in the quiet hum of the station, Lyra felt it. Humanity's potential, limitless, undaunted, and ready to rise wherever it was challenged. The following day, the arena had transformed once again. The organizers had promised the next challenge would be unlike anything before. The floor shifted constantly, creating uneven platforms, narrow bridges, and sudden drops. Energy barriers pulsed in unpredictable patterns, and holographic traps flickered on and off without warning. Lyra observed the arena quietly from the entrance, her eyes scanning every detail. She understood immediately that raw strength alone would not carry her through this trial. Timing, strategy, and adaptability would be key. Her opponents appeared one by one, emerging from the far side of the arena. Each was unique, trained for different forms of combat, and each radiated confidence in their abilities. The first was a hulking creature with thick, scaled arms that glowed faintly with energy, capable of smashing through walls or crushing opponents in seconds. The second was a lithe alien, its limbs long and flexible, moving in ways that defied normal geometry, capable of contorting and striking from impossible angles. The third opponent hovered slightly above the ground, surrounded by a faint energy field that could disrupt sensory perception and create illusions, making her anticipate attacks that weren't even coming. The crowd murmured in excitement. This was meant to be the ultimate test, a trial that would humiliate humans, or so most spectators assumed. Lyra, however, was calm. Her training had prepared her not just for physical battles, but for mental ones. Humans had survived by learning, observing, and adapting to new environments for millennia. She trusted her instincts and her understanding of patterns, both in movement and strategy. The bell rang. Instantly, chaos erupted. The hulking creature charged first, slamming its massive arms down to crush the platforms around Lyra. She leapt lightly, her feet barely touching the unstable ground, and used its momentum to push it off balance. The creature roared, shaking the arena with sheer force, but Lyra had already moved on, positioning herself carefully on a stable platform across the shifting floor. The lithe alien moved next, striking with a speed that could have caught lesser opponents off guard. Lyra watched the rhythm of its movements carefully. Every twist, every stretch, every extension of its limbs offered a small clue to its intentions. Using her understanding of leverage and trajectory, she sidestepped and guided its momentum into a barrier. The alien collided with the energy wall, temporarily stunned, giving her a clear opening to continue maneuvering through the arena. The hovering opponent remained calm, its energy field creating illusions that shifted her perception. Lyra felt the subtle difference between real and projected movements. The vibrations in the air, the slight lag in the illusion, the way shadows fell differently. Humans were naturally observant, noticing details that others might dismiss. She used this to her advantage, weaving through the illusions with grace, moving where the attacks truly were, not where they seemed to be. Minutes passed in a blur. Lyra moved seamlessly across moving platforms, dodging strikes, redirecting energy, and exploiting her opponent's mistakes. The hulking creature swung wildly, growing frustrated as its attacks missed. The lithe alien tried to anticipate her movements, only to be outmaneuvered by subtle adjustments and careful timing. The hovering opponent's illusions faltered as Lyra consistently identified real threats and responded accurately. At one point, the hulking creature managed to corner her against a shifting platform edge. It raised its massive arms, ready to strike with enough force to send her flying. Lyra remained calm. She dropped her weight, shifted her stance, and in one fluid motion rolled beneath its swing. She twisted, using its own momentum to redirect it into the energy barrier behind it. The creature crashed into it, dazed, while she regained balance effortlessly. The lithe alien tried to take advantage of the moment, extending its limbs for a surprise strike. Lyra anticipated the trajectory and used a small lever on the arena floor to trigger a moving panel. It swung between them, deflecting the attack and forcing the alien to stumble. Lyra didn't hesitate. She moved swiftly, sweeping her leg and guiding the alien into a harmless but incapacitating tumble. The hovering opponent's energy illusions flared in confusion. Lyra remained focused, moving in ways that were precise but unpredictable. She shifted platforms, changed angles, and created a rhythm that the opponent could not anticipate. Every action she took forced her enemies into mistakes. Every reaction turned their strength into disadvantage. The crowd watched in amazement. Every move Lyra made was calculated yet fluid, a combination of instinct, observation, and human ingenuity. The aliens in the audience, once confident in the presumed fragility of humans, were now whispering in disbelief. "How does she anticipate every move?" one asked. Another muttered, "It is not just skill, it is understanding. Humans think differently. They adapt faster than we expect." The bell rang again, signaling the end of the trial. All three opponents lay sprawled across the arena, struggling to regain balance, exhausted by their own overextended efforts and miscalculations. Lyra remained in the center, breathing evenly, calm, and poised. She had moved through chaos with grace, using her mind and body as a single weapon, proving that humans could overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. The judges approached, their expressions a mixture of respect, awe, and a hint of disbelief. The black-scaled alien from the previous round spoke first. "Human, you have faced the unsanctioned trial and emerged victorious. Not only have you defeated skilled opponents, but you have done so in conditions that would overwhelm most species. Your combination of observation, timing, and adaptability is remarkable." Lyra inclined her head slightly. "Humans survive because we observe, adapt, and act with purpose," she said simply. "Strength is temporary. Intelligence, timing, and adaptability endure. That is how we thrive." The judges exchanged glances, recognizing the truth in her words. Throughout the galaxy, many species relied on assumptions of power, size, or technology. Humans were often underestimated, dismissed as fragile and weak. Yet time and again, they demonstrated that cleverness, reflexes, and resilience could overcome raw power. Lyra's victories were living proof of that principle. In the stands, young humans whispered among themselves, inspired by what they had witnessed. "We are capable of more than they realize," one said. "We can overcome any challenge if we observe and adapt." Another added, "It's not just about fighting, it's about thinking, learning, and using what we have in clever ways. Humans are unstoppable when we work like that." The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Victory goes to the human fighter Lyra. In conditions designed to defeat even the strongest, she has triumphed through skill, intelligence, and adaptability. Witness humanity's power in action." Lyra walked toward the exit, acknowledging the crowd with a simple nod. She did not need to celebrate or gloat. Her actions spoke louder than any words could. Each victory reinforced a truth that humans had long known. Their greatest strength lay in their ingenuity, their willpower, and their ability to adapt to circumstances that seemed impossible. As she moved through the station corridors, the hum of machinery and energy felt like a pulse of the galaxy itself, testing, observing, and reacting. Lyra felt the weight of expectation, not as pressure but as motivation. Humans were few in number across the stars, but their ability to adapt and overcome made them formidable, often in ways others did not anticipate. She paused briefly at a large viewport, gazing at the stars beyond the station. Billions of lights flickered across the void, each representing worlds yet to meet humanity. Many had assumed that humans were weak, fragile, and dependent on tools and weapons. Lyra knew otherwise. Humanity's strength was in their mind, their reflexes, and their unyielding spirit. They learned, adapted, and overcame. A small vibration on her wrist reminded her of a message from her trainer. "They will underestimate you again. Show them what it means to be human." Lyra smiled faintly. That was exactly why she fought, not for recognition, but to prove that humans could rise above expectation, using intelligence, courage, and adaptability as weapons more powerful than any physical force. As she continued down the corridors, her thoughts turned to the next challenge. The arena had tested her in ways that combined physical skill with mental precision. Beyond the station, there were more worlds, more species, and more trials. Humans would continue to be underestimated, but that was their advantage. Every doubt cast upon them was an opportunity to surprise, to overcome, and to demonstrate the limitless potential of their species. Every step she took echoed with possibility. Every victory reminded her of humanity's core truth. They could face any challenge and triumph, not through sheer power alone, but through observation, adaptability, and courage. Across the galaxy, humans were proving, one encounter at a time, that their underestimated abilities were a force to be reckoned with. Lyra paused once more at the observation deck, looking down at the arena that had tested her so thoroughly. The platforms were silent now, the energy barriers dimmed. Opponents had recovered, and some were speaking quietly among themselves, no longer with arrogance but with newfound respect. Humans, they realized, were not simply survivors. They were strategic, clever, and formidable. Lyra felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, not because she had defeated her opponents, but because she had demonstrated something larger, that human ingenuity and spirit were capable of overcoming even the most complex challenges. In every trial, humans adapted, they survived, and they excelled in ways that others often failed to anticipate. With one final glance at the arena, Lyra turned and continued her journey through the station. Beyond this point, more challenges awaited, but she felt ready. Every battle, every test, and every demonstration reinforced the same truth. Humans, underestimated and dismissed, could rise to any occasion, exceed every expectation, and leave their mark on the galaxy in ways that no one had predicted. And as she walked, her mind was already planning, analyzing, and preparing for the future, confident that humanity's spirit, adaptability, and courage would continue to shine, wherever the stars took them next. The arena was larger than any Lyra had entered before, stretching out. Like a miniature city, towers of metal and glass rose from the floor, connected by narrow bridges and suspended platforms. Energy barriers pulsed unpredictably, shifting locations without warning. The entire structure seemed alive, responding to movements, detecting threats, and creating challenges for anyone brave or foolish enough to enter. Lyra stepped into the entrance, her eyes scanning every inch of the vast arena. She had faced 3 rounds of testing, each more challenging than the last, but this was the ultimate trial. The final stage, where skill, ingenuity, and human spirit would be measured against the galaxy's finest. Her opponents appeared simultaneously. 5 figures, each more imposing than the last. One was a massive, armored brute with claws sharp enough to cut through reinforced steel. Another was a nimble creature, its limbs extending like elastic, capable of strikes from impossible angles. A third hovered in the air, surrounded by energy capable of disrupting balance and perception. The fourth emitted a field that interfered with sight and sound, making it nearly impossible to judge distance or movement. And the fifth, the most dangerous of all, radiated a psychic presence that could anticipate the faintest shifts in her body, predicting attacks before they fully materialized. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Spectators from countless star systems leaned forward, eager to witness the final demonstration. Many whispered in disbelief. "The human will fail," one said. "There is no way a fragile species can survive this." Others, watching closely, began to murmur differently. "She has survived everything else. Maybe humans are not what we assumed." Lyra remained calm. Her mind was clear, her body poised. She had survived the unexpected, adapted to chaos, and triumphed over impossible odds before. Every movement in her past fights had prepared her for this moment. Humans had survived for millennia in environments that crushed weaker species. That instinct, the ability to observe, analyze, and adapt, was her greatest weapon. The bell rang and chaos erupted. The massive brute charged first, swinging its claws with the intent to crush Lyra instantly. She sidestepped effortlessly, her feet barely touching the unstable platform beneath her. Using its momentum, she guided it into a narrow bridge, where the size of the arena itself limited its movement. The brute struggled, its own strength becoming a liability in the confined space. The elastic alien struck next, its limbs stretching in impossible ways to try to catch her off guard. Lyra anticipated the angles, using feints and subtle shifts in position to redirect its momentum. It collided with one of the shifting towers, dazed, giving her a brief opening to advance. Every move she made was deliberate, yet fluid, a dance of precision that her opponents could not predict. The hovering energy user surged forward, attempting to destabilize her balance with bursts of concentrated force. Lyra countered instinctively, using the shifting platforms and barriers to absorb and redirect the energy. Every strike from her opponents was met not with force alone, but with calculation and adaptation. She moved in ways that maximized her own advantage while minimizing risk. The field-emitting opponent created disorientation, making it difficult to judge space, distance, and timing. Lyra relied on subtle cues, the vibrations beneath her feet, the airflow, and even the faint echoes of movement in the arena. Humans had always compensated for sensory limitations with ingenuity. She allowed her other senses and her instincts to guide her, turning the supposed disadvantage into an opportunity to remain unpredictable. Finally, the psychic presence struck. It radiated a subtle anticipation of her movements, sensing the smallest shifts in muscle and posture. Many would have faltered, overwhelmed by the feeling of being read before acting. Lyra, however, had prepared for this. She introduced randomness in micro-movements, feints within feints, small, unpredictable adjustments that even a psychic could not fully interpret. The creature attempted to predict her attack, but every calculation was off, every assumption challenged. Minutes passed, but they felt like seconds. Lyra moved across the arena with grace, timing, and intelligence. She avoided the brute's powerful swings, redirected the elastic alien strikes, absorbed and countered the energy bursts, ignored the sensory disorientation, and outmaneuvered the psychic's anticipation. Every opponent that relied on raw strength, speed, or prediction was frustrated by the unexpected. Lyra's movements demonstrated not just skill, but human ingenuity and adaptability. She focused on the brute first. With precise timing, she sidestepped another massive swing and delivered a low push against its legs. Gravity and momentum worked against it, sending it stumbling backward into a barrier. The creature roared but could not regain balance in time. The crowd gasped. Even the other opponents hesitated, realizing the human was no ordinary fighter. The elastic alien lunged, attempting a complicated strike that would have caught anyone else off guard. Lyra anticipated its motion, using a combination of feints and redirection to guide it into the path of the brute, now recovering slightly. The two collided, each surprised by the interference. Lyra took advantage of the opening, delivering precise movements that destabilized the elastic creature, forcing it to stumble to the arena floor. The hovering energy user surged again, its attacks aimed at overwhelming her. Lyra moved fluidly, letting the pulses strike the walls and platforms harmlessly. She twisted, leaped, and redirected energy with minimal effort, showing how humans could transform disadvantage into opportunity. The creature faltered, confused by her control and precision. The field-emitting alien tried to trap her in sensory disorientation. Lyra closed her eyes briefly, relying on touch, balance, and intuition to navigate the area. Every step was deliberate, calculated, and informed by the subtle vibrations and echoes that most species ignored. She moved through the confusion, positioning herself to deliver a series of precise pushes that left the alien sprawled on the floor, unable to recover quickly. Finally, the psychic opponent confronted her directly, attempting to anticipate her every move. Lyra's solution was elegant in its simplicity, unpredictability. She introduced micro-feints, subtle shifts, and irregular timing. The psychic's calculations failed repeatedly. Lyra moved through the arena like water flowing around obstacles, always finding openings and turning each prediction into a mistake. One by one, the opponents fell, exhausted, frustrated, or simply unable to match the precision and ingenuity of the human before them. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, voices echoing through the vast chamber. Spectators from across star systems cheered for the unexpected, witnessing humanity's triumph in a way that could not be ignored. The judges approached, their expressions a mixture of awe, respect, and disbelief. The black-scaled alien who had been observing closely stepped forward. "Human, you have faced 5 of our greatest champions simultaneously, under conditions designed to defeat anyone. Not only have you survived, but you have demonstrated intelligence, adaptability, and mastery beyond what we have seen in any species. You are extraordinary." Lyra nodded quietly. "It is how humans survive," she said simply. "We observe, we adapt, and we act decisively. Strength alone is not enough. We learn, we improvise, and we persevere. That is how humanity thrives." The judges exchanged glances, acknowledging the truth in her words. Across countless worlds, humans had been underestimated. Their numbers were small, their technology sometimes dismissed, their physical abilities seemingly modest. Yet time and again, they proved that intelligence, adaptability, and courage could overcome every obstacle. Lyra's final demonstration had made that truth undeniable. The crowd continued to cheer, many on their feet, applauding not only the human skill but the demonstration of an entirely underestimated species. Aliens whispered among themselves, reassessing the assumptions they had held about humanity. Some had doubted them entirely, but Lyra had shown that humans were strategic, inventive, and resilient beyond measure. Back in the corridors, young humans who had traveled across the galaxy for the competition whispered excitedly. "She is incredible," one said. "I never realized we could fight like that." Another added, "Humans are not just survivors. We are clever, adaptable, and capable of incredible feats. This is inspiring." Lyra walked calmly toward the exit, acknowledging the cheers with a simple nod. She did not need to boast. Her actions spoke for themselves. Every opponent she had faced, every challenge she had overcome, was proof that humanity's greatest strength was its ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. As she passed the observation deck, she paused to look down at the arena. The platforms were still, the energy barriers dimmed, and the defeated champions were slowly recovering. Even in defeat, there was a sense of respect, a recognition that humans were not merely survivors. They were formidable opponents in their own right. Her thoughts turned to the galaxy beyond. There were countless worlds, civilizations, and challenges yet to encounter humanity. Many would doubt, many would underestimate, but each would face the same truth. Humans could observe, adapt, and overcome. Intelligence, courage, and spirit were as powerful as any weapon, and humans wielded them with precision. A soft vibration on her wrist reminded her of a message from her trainer. "You have proven what humans can do. Remember, this is just the beginning. Others will underestimate again. Show them humanity's strength." Lyra smiled faintly. That was the purpose of every battle, not glory, not recognition, but to demonstrate that humans could surpass expectations, thrive under pressure, and turn every disadvantage into opportunity. She looked out at the stars, countless points of light stretching across the galaxy. Humans were scattered, often few in number, but each carried the same potential she had just demonstrated. Observation, adaptation, courage, and ingenuity. These were the weapons humans carried within themselves, the qualities that would continue to surprise, inspire, and challenge every species that underestimated them. Lyra's journey through the arena had been more than a series of victories. It was a statement to the galaxy. Humanity, underestimated and dismissed, could rise above any obstacle. Every challenge she faced, every opponent she overcame, was proof that humans were not defined by size, strength, or weaponry, but by spirit, intelligence, and the unyielding will to succeed. With one last glance at the arena, Lyra continued through the corridors, prepared for whatever awaited next. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's potential, and that demonstration would echo far beyond the walls of the station. She felt the pulse of possibility, the rhythm of challenges yet to come, and the knowledge that humans would continue to thrive, adapt, and overcome. And as she walked, calm, confident, and unshaken, one truth remained clear. Humans, underestimated and dismissed, were capable of greatness beyond imagination. Across the stars, wherever they were challenged, humanity would rise, proving time and again that their spirit, ingenuity, and courage were forces no one could ignore.